Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Youth Rights Podcast. I am your host, Zane Miller, and today we're going to be talking about bullying in schools and the way that that connects with systematic youth rights issues. You want to introduce yourself, Bailey?
Yes. Hi, I am Bailey McCoy, and I will be telling the stories of my experience to talk about bullying and the way it can affect youth and their rights.
All right. Well, just, go ahead and just, tell one of the stories that you were thinking of about, your personal experiences.
Yes. So, first of all, just a little background details. I'm currently 18, and I graduated high school in June of 2025, and I went to 3 different high schools. And so one of the high schools I went to, it was my first one. It was for my freshman year, my sophomore year, and then like the first couple months of my junior year. But then in my junior year, I was moved to another city that was far away, and it was like 8 or 9 hours away. So I went to a different school for most of my junior year, and then was back here where I am now in Northern California for my senior year at a different high school. And so I've been through quite a few different high schools and have dealt with a lot of different people who bullied me.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the examples is like when I believe I was a freshman, and what happened one time was, it was so crazy because I was sitting on the school bus, and this girl that was on the school bus with me, she like was being rude, and I was sitting near her, if I recall correctly, with a friend or whatever, and her and her other friends started being rude to me and harassing me and just saying rude stuff, like instigating. And I was just sitting there laughing, because when someone's rude to me in the moment or trying to start stuff, I just laugh it off.
Mm-hmm.
That is my way of going about it. And I sat there just laughing, and oh my gosh, I told the girl, I was like, I try not to laugh when you're around. And she was like, I try not to punch you in the face when you're around.
Gosh.
And she went up to the bus driver, tried to claim that I was harassing her, and the bus driver made me move up to the front of the bus.
Oh my gosh.
And the school was trying to threaten me with disciplinary action. And I'm like, she's the one who's bullying me.
Did your bus have like cameras or anything on it?
Most school bus. I think that all school buses from public schools here in California do have cameras on their bus.
So they, instead of checking the cameras and seeing who is the real cause of the bullying and harassment, they just decided, let's just blame the victim over here and try to discipline them, when there was a very easy fix to that just check the cameras and see where the actual problem is coming from. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, a lot of the times schools just, take the easy way out, I think, about just like, oh yeah, let's just blame this person. It's easy, boom, problem solved. But no, that's not problem solved at all.
No. And also at that same high school that I went to for my freshman and sophomore year, one thing that really, really bothered me and made me uncomfortable is that a lot of it was so crazy, and I don't know why it would always happen, but so many of the boys that I didn't even know would literally flirt with me.
Oh. Were they being harassing you about it, or
yeah, it was almost like they were intentionally trying to tease me in a rude way, but they were also flirting with me, which felt like harassment.
Yeah, for sure. That's really weird.
And one time I even had one of my friends, this friend of mine was an adult at the time, like a young adult, and a lot of my family members knew her, but I was telling her about what was happening. I gave her the Instagram of 2 of the boys who kept doing it to me. These 2 boys are brothers, they're twin brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave my friend their Instagram, and she messaged both of them and told them to stop harassing me and that I don't want them. And then one of the boys even replied and said, nah, that's my girl for real.
And so they knew, you told me, they knew that you didn't like him in that way, right?
Yeah, and some of it even happened while I had a boyfriend at the time.
Wow. That's, yeah, a lot of people just are really, they just start harassing people like that, and they don't know how to take no for an answer. And it's like, if schools don't handle that, it's really bad, because, starting with that is a gateway to so many worse things. Like, it's really bad. And that's something
Oh, yes.
that just needs to be handled, like, immediately, and like cut off from the source. Like, don't even let it start, because it can get really bad.
Another example of a time that I was bullied, this actually happened at a continuation school, which was like a temporary part of my high school career. Because I believe it was when I, like, in the early part of my sophomore year or something like that, I got sent to the continuation school because of some mental and like behavioral issues. And it was during a time where I was dealing with a really bad home environment, which is what I had dealt with for most of my high school career, like different bad home environments. And what happened was, in my sophomore year, there was a time where we were having an IEP meeting for me. And I was getting heated and frustrated because I felt like I was being attacked, and I felt like I was not being listened to by my team. And when I was getting frustrated and clearly agitated, one of the staff members in that meeting told me to step outside and take a break. And they were telling me, like, directing me to do it. And I was telling them, like, no, I don't need to go take a break. I'm frustrated because you guys aren't listening to me. And I was like, a break won't help anything with that. And so then when they kept like telling me, like, you need to go step outside and take a break, like, when they kept telling me that, I got so overwhelmed and frustrated, I ended up running off campus. And because of that, they sent me down to the continuation school, plus a bunch of other issues I was already having. And so they sent me down to the continuation school. And let me tell you, being at that continuation school is the worst part of my high school career, because almost everybody down there at that continuation school was bullying me, harassing me, and one time I even got assaulted in the classroom.
Wow, what happened with that?
By another girl. I got physically assaulted by another girl in the classroom, and what had happened that led up to that, I didn't even know what I was doing, because I was sitting there just doing my work and had my own eyes on my own paper. And this girl that was sitting near me, she like started throwing like random like small pieces of rolled up paper and pencil erasers. She started throwing those things at me from her desk. And I was trying not to like get angry or start more stuff, so I was just laughing. I was just looking at her laughing. And that actually made things way worse, because then the whole class started like encouraging her and like cheering her on, and then she started literally physically assaulting me and putting her hands on me and was just literally assaulting me terribly. And during the time of this incident, there was a substitute teacher, and he wasn't even doing anything about it. It's like, if anything, he was just sitting there watching. Didn't try to call the office, didn't try to help me or intervene, just sat there letting it happen.
And see, that's such a big issue, because a lot of the times when people feel like they can get away with it, like they'll feel like they can get away with it if there's a substitute teacher, because they'll be like, oh yeah, that teacher just doesn't know what to do. So then they'll act like that. And then it's weird, because they can get away with it in a situation like that, like for sure, about the teacher just sitting there not doing anything. And it's like, yeah, that they definitely need more like awareness or a training, I guess, for the substitute teachers to be like, yeah, you're not just there to sit in a seat. You're there to actually, be a teacher and make sure that stuff like this isn't happening in your classroom, especially when it gets to physical assault incidents. Yeah, no, that's crazy.
And what's so crazy is that, like months into my time at the continuation school, I had been working on like my grades, my mental health and everything. And eventually we were able to have a meeting where we discussed like a plan for me to like ease my way up back to the normal regular high school. And so we created like a plan where I would start off with like 1 or 2 class periods and work my way up until I'm back full time at the other school, at the regular school.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and eventually I did make it back up there, and everything was going pretty well. But then one day I went to one of my normal classes at the regular school, and like normal, and there was a substitute teacher that day, and it was a substitute for one of my regular teachers. And the substitute teacher that was there was the same one that when that assault incident happened. And when I entered the classroom, that substitute teacher immediately recognized me, and he was like, "Hey, it's been a while." And I was like, "Yeah, I still remember what happened."
Yeah.
He looked at me and he was like, "Well, you kind of asked for it."
Seriously? He said that? Oh my god.
Yeah. And I literally, as a few minutes later, the TA came in, like, she was like one of the other school staff who was like a TA, like helping the teacher and everything. And when she entered, I told her I need to speak to her outside.
Mm-hmm.
I went outside with her, told her what just happened, and she asked me what I want to do, and I was like, speak to the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to the principal, and I told the principal what was happening, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable being in a classroom with that guy.
Yeah.
And the principal luckily made accommodations as necessary and let me sit in a different classroom for that class period for the day.
That's good. Do you know if they did anything about that substitute, or if he was still allowed to substitute there?
From what I know, he was able to continue substituting there.
Wow. Yeah, that's... I mean, at least they made it to where you didn't have to be in that classroom, which is like partially fixing the problem. But imagine if that happened to someone else. Like, imagine someone else like you was in his class, and then they're getting assaulted, then he's just sitting there and he thinks to himself, he's like, oh, yeah, they probably deserve it. And then he just lets it happen again, like what already happened to you. So it's like moving you out kind of helped you, but in order to actually make it to where that doesn't happen again, you have to get rid of the people who are permitting that to occur. Yeah, that's definitely something they should have done.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like a lot of like the bullying events I experienced at that first high school I went to for my freshman and sophomore year and the very start of my junior year. Now, the high school I went to that was far away for like most of my junior year, like, and stuff like that, where I went to there wasn't actually a whole lot of bullying there. And it's kind of interesting because the high school I went to for most of my junior year was actually way more populated than either of the other two schools. So it's kind of interesting that I wasn't really bullied much at all there. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of makes sense because, like, in a bigger school, you're more anonymous and less people like know directly about you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and so I didn't really experience much bullying at all that I can remember there. But one thing for sure is that in my senior year, when I went to the third high school, there was a specific incident that I'm about to share. There was two girls, and then there was another student who was transgender and a male. And I'm going to tell you that they were all like a part of a friend group that I was friends with. To keep their names separate, I'm going to just say like person A, person B, and person C.
Okay.
And so just so that we know who I'm talking about, person A was the main person who like was terrible and like dangerous to me. Mm-hmm. And then person B was another senior friend of the initial of the person A. And then person C is the transgender male person who was a freshman. In September 2024, I met person A and we became pretty good friends. And she had introduced me to person B and C. And I became friends with them, thought they were pretty nice, pretty funny, maybe some dark humor, but I thought they were pretty funny.
Yeah. And
so we were good friends for a pretty long while, and they were really sweet at times and really funny at times, until one day in March 2025, I had noticed like person A frequently flipping out on me like an emotional punching bag, mm-hmm. like even if I didn't do anything directly to her. And so because it kept happening, it was a pattern. One day while she was calm and I felt like it was good timing, I went up to her and I was just politely, respectfully, I was like, you gotta quit flipping out on me. It's traumatic for me.
Yeah, of course.
And she responded with, but I do it to everyone.
That's such a weird response.
And I was like, well, if you can't stop doing it to me, we can't be friends. Mm-hmm. And so a couple days went by, and I noticed that person A was not very happy with that. And so a couple days went by, and I was able to talk to person C. And he agreed to talk to person A on my behalf and like try to help mediate things and calm things down and work everything out. Mm-hmm. And So we worked on all of that, and he said to give him 2 weeks, and so I gave them all 2 weeks, just gave them their space and everything, and kept my distance.
Yeah.
And then after 2 weeks, I followed up with person C, and when person A wasn't around, I followed up with person C and figured out how things went and was trying to figure out what happened. While person C was telling me what happened, his exact words were, "So you're no longer welcome to our table or group, and that's for your safety and protection so that your teeth don't end up on the table from person A."
Wow. That's actually insane. That you were just trying to set a boundary for how you wanted your friends to treat you, and instead they're acting like you're the problem and you shouldn't be welcome anywhere. Yeah, wow, that's
Right.
ridiculous.
And then what's interesting is that after all of that, person B, the other senior, was still friends with me. Like, I was still pretty good friends with her and things were pretty decent. But eventually that did change, and I'm going to get there in a moment. But then after I was informed of the threats, what's even crazier is that very night, I actually did something that probably wasn't so wise, but it was kind of like out of like in the heat of the moment type thing. And so what I did was I texted person A in like a confronting way, and I was like, "Hey, just so you know, if you do decide to do what you're saying you'll do and knock my teeth out, I will press charges. Like there's going to be legal consequences if you do that to me."
Yeah.
And person A replied and said, "And who told you?"
Yeah. Weird how they're more worried about who told them they said that, rather than the fact that like they just shouldn't have said that in general about somebody. Yeah, that very weird.
Right. And so after all that, I replied to person A and I was like, "Does that matter? No, it does not. What matters is that you need serious help. Otherwise, you'll receive serious consequences."
Yeah.
And I told her that, and then she was like, "Okay, I really don't care, but okay." And I'm telling you right now, the argument went on, things went on. It was just a bunch of crazy drama stuff. And but then the next day, I went to the school principal about it because at the time I shared a class with person A. And so I went to the principal and I explained the situation, and I was like, "I do not feel safe with this person in class. Like, I do not feel safe being around her in class." And so what was kind of surprising is that the principal sent emails to my team, and as previously mentioned, I had an IEP, and so the principal sent an email to my IEP case manager along with my academic counselor and the teachers that would be involved in a possible schedule modification. Mind you, I was a senior, it was March, mid-semester, and that is unheard of. Like, switching or modifying a schedule in March, which is the middle of the semester for a senior, that is unheard of.
Yeah.
And so, but the principal sent out that email and was explaining the situation and the urgency and how I do not feel safe in class with person A. And so then the very next day, my schedule was modified to where a couple of my classes were like switched around, and like not necessarily changed, but just the class periods were switched around. And so they had that done by the next day. So I no longer shared a class with person A. And I was like, that's crazy that they did that so quickly. And that's very rare in a high school. But the point is that that's exactly how high school staff and administrators should react in situations like this, where safety becomes a real issue.
Yeah, for sure. And that's an example of them doing the right thing, actually. And like you said, it's kind of surprising when they do that. But yeah, it's kind of how bad that it had to get to for them to actually take those steps to, kind of remove you from that situation that could be a threat to your safety. Do you know if they ever took any disciplinary action on like the girl who was the problem, or did they not do anything about that?
So I'm not sure if they ever took any disciplinary action, because from my experience in high school, when there's a bullying situation or like a safety situation involving students, the school administrators are not supposed to like tell any of the other students like involved like what one student gets or what kind of disciplinary action is taken. for like privacy and confidentiality reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair, but at the same time, if I was being bullied and by a specific person, I'd want to know what would happen. Like, I'd want to know if anything happened to them about it. And it's like, yeah, sure, privacy, but it's kind of my business too, since, I was in, like, I feel like it would be your business to know what happens to the person who was actively harassing you, you know?
Exactly, because it's like, the one literally getting harassed here. It's not like by telling me if any disciplinary action is taken. It's not like you're telling some random unknown student. You're telling the person who directly received the harassment.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that is your business. You're directly involved in the business. So, I wouldn't really, in my opinion, at least be a privacy issue.
Yeah, but then things kind of continued in a way, and what happened next was a couple days later, I actually reached out to person B to ask if like maybe she can try to help mediate things and like try to help like resolve things here and bring things to a more calm situation. And person B said that she will try, so she agreed to try. And a few minutes later, I receive a text from person A saying, "Hey, I heard you're talking to person B." And I was like, "Yeah, so?" And person A was like, "So stay out of it." And I was like, "Stay out of what?" And person A was like, "Me and person C's life and business. It's none of yours anyway. You never cared." And I'm telling you, it went on and on. But some of the craziest things that person A said that really stood out to me were, number one, person A actually weaponized my mental health history and my past suicide attempts. Person A literally weaponized that and said, "That's on your record forever." Like, started weaponizing my mental health history against me. At one point, while we were on audio call, she literally began like to say something, immediately stopped herself, and she was like, "Nope, not gonna say that because then you'll use it against me in court."
That's so strange. It's like she's preparing. She's like preparing herself to be like, okay, when I have to go to court, I can't say this, but I still want to be harassing you, but I have to be careful about how I can harass you. Really weird.
It's so crazy, and that's called calculated.
I mean, yeah, because instead of her thinking to herself, maybe I shouldn't be harassing a person in a way that would make me go to court, she thinks, how can I harass you just enough to where you can't use specific things in court? Shouldn't that be enough for her? Like, if she's having to think that through, that should be enough for her to realize, maybe I shouldn't be acting this way towards someone. Like, yeah, wow.
Yeah, and what also happened was I noticed that for the last few months of the school year, I noticed that anytime I would like see person A near me, or anytime like I would see her in passing or whatever, I would get this immediate, like instant in the moment trauma response where my hands would be visibly shaky, my heart would be racing. That's literally my nervous system identifying a real threat.
For sure. And that is such a real thing. Kind of a little bit off topic, but I relate to what you experienced with that, because like my stepdad was kind of like really emotionally abusive, and he would always scream really loudly from downstairs, and I was upstairs. So it's weird because whenever I hear a noise that sounds like him screaming, or that sounds like his voice, it's just instant like porcupine, like trauma response, cortisol spike. And it's weird because that stuff is so real. Like it really, just hearing something or like seeing something that relates to a bad experience you've had when you're afraid, or when you're scared, or when you feel like you're powerless, that comes back, and that gets you even if the situation's over, and it lasts. That's the thing. And that's the thing that people that like do bullying and stuff, and then the teachers that don't really take it seriously, that's what they don't realize all the time, is this stuff lasts. Like, this stuff lasts with people for a very long time, and can like really impact someone going forward.
Right, yeah. And so like you said, like trauma response, that's that's not just someone being dramatic or sensitive. That's someone's nervous system saying, this feels dangerous. I am traumatized. I can't handle this.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like an instant rise in cortisol and adrenaline. Like, it's not good.
Yeah.
And it can have a really stressful, bad impact on you over time. And what's also really crazy, though, too, speaking of the trauma responses, one time I was in class as usual, and what happened was it was junior state testing time, and it was in early April of 2025. And so it was junior state testing time. And the class I was in consisted of mainly juniors and only a few seniors. And the teacher of that class was also my IEP case manager. And so she was a pretty nice teacher and everything. And so when it was state testing time, it was interesting the way they did it, because like juniors went to a different classroom for the day, while the seniors of that classroom came over to the classroom I was in for the day. It's like they switched classrooms for the day for state testing. But then basically, one of the seniors that entered the room was person A for the day. And so that's when the trauma response kicked in instantly. And because the teacher was also my IEP case manager, and I had been talking to her about the situation a lot lately or previously, I went up to her, showed her the response that I was having physically, and I told her person A is in the room right now. And let me tell you, the teacher, I was genuinely surprised by like how quickly she responded and how well she responded, because a lot of teachers would have just said, just ignore it, or just sit away from her, or you'll be fine. But this teacher didn't even dismiss it like that. This teacher immediately wrote me a library pass and let me go sit in the library for safety so that I would feel okay and wouldn't feel in danger.
That's good that they reacted that way.
In July, I made a report of the situation to the sheriff's office. I made a report of that to the sheriff's office, and I told them, like, I have evidence, like screenshots, and I have witnesses. And the sheriff's office dismissed it as not credible.
How could it not be credible if it's something directly?
They conducted an investigation. Even though I said I had evidence and witnesses, they conducted no investigation.
Wow, that's weird. Because you literally have evidence. I mean, it can't not be credible, because it's literally something that she's said, like that she's texted you, that you have proof that it was her saying it. Like that can't not be credible. That's just them being lazy and not wanting to handle the situation.
It's also them like discrediting like young people who are vulnerable, because the police and stuff like that have a frequent tendency to dismiss young individuals. And what's even crazier is that, like, if you really think about it, what person A did, like, first of all, there was clearly some criminal threats going on.
Yeah, and like, imagine what would happen if she actually did something like that. About if she ended up, like, after you made the report and the police like disregarded it, imagine if she actually ended up doing something, like she ended up finding you and like assaulting you or doing something worse. And that could have been prevented if you were taken seriously. And again, it's just like these situations aren't necessarily taken seriously by the people in power, and that could really lead to bad situations coming from that.
Right. And then the final thing I want to mention from this entire story about this particular situation with these people, the final thing I want to mention is some of the red flags that I only noticed after the threats were made and after I realized how bad person A was. And that's when like my brain suddenly started flooding my memory with like some creepy things that were said and done while we were friends. One time I asked person A, I was like, what would you do if you witnessed someone trying to hurt me or assault me? And I was curious to see her response. I remember her exact words. She was like, I'd grab them by their hair, throw them to the curb, put my foot on their head, and whisper, do you beg mercy now?
Wow. She had that planned out the whole time.
But it was just a crazy whole event. And I know that a lot of it didn't like ultimately fall on to like things related to like the system or whatever, but I just had to share that story because of it being related to bullying. But it was more than just bullying. It was active danger and active threats from a high school peer.
And it went on for a while too. Like it didn't stop when you graduated. It's like yeah, that is
Right.
really concerning for sure. Yeah, and I can see why you were definitely afraid about that.
Yeah, and it just really just sent me into a whole like, and sometimes just thinking back about it, I'm just like that was not good.
But kind of bringing it back to the bullying topic. This is a story that I want to talk about. My sister, she's in middle school right now, and there was like a dude who was like kind of harassing her, kind of in the same way that you were talking about those other guys were towards you. But it was like a guy who would like trip her or like try to trip her in the hallway, and she got like really annoyed with him about it. But one time he like spit on her or something, and she like screamed at him, and she ended up trying to report him to the like an assistant principal or something. And this is what I want to talk about these systematic issues. Is the assistant principal did not take her seriously at all, like at all, and they were just like, oh, he wouldn't do that, he's such a good kid, he never do anything like that. Did not take her seriously at all. Eventually they checked the cameras though, and they did see that he did end up doing it, and he did get punished because of it. But that's the thing. Imagine if they didn't have cameras there. It would literally have just been her word against his. And if the teacher trusts him of, oh yeah, he's such a good kid, then her word would have just meant nothing. Right? So that's something that I worry about a lot in those types of situations, about, them not taking someone seriously, and then, kind of just defaulting to, oh, this guy's the good kid, we're going to believe him. He's probably telling the truth, rather than the girl who's actually being harassed over here. Because that responsibility really does fall down to the teachers of like, are you going to take this seriously? And if they fail that responsibility, there's a lot of, bad things that could come out of that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, and it's just so crazy.
But it definitely feels like they're taking that, again, it feels like they're taking that easy way out of just like, oh yeah, we're gonna punish this person. There's another thing that I want to talk about too when it comes to schools and bullying, and that's like zero tolerance policies. And a lot of schools to try to fight back against bullying, they're like, oh, zero tolerance policies for zero tolerance for bullying. And that sounds like a good thing, but when you put it into practice, it's kind of not. Because it kind of means that if there's a situation between two people, they punish both of them equally, even if one of them was the instigator. And a lot of that gets into situations with fights, where if one person picks a fight with another person in school and that person fights back, both of them get punished. I saw a video a while ago. It was in a cafeteria. This kid's just sitting down in the lunchroom, just like eating lunch. And this other dude, apparently they had beef or something. He comes over and he starts like punching him. And the guy stands up while getting punched. He holds his hands up, motioning for like someone in the school to intervene, and nobody intervenes. He's just sitting there getting punched. So eventually he grabs the kid and he wrestles the kid and he takes him down. And then the school cop comes over and wrestles that kid off of him and tries to hold that kid back. And it's like, why are you punishing the guy who's defending it? Like, he didn't even want to fight the kid. He was literally holding his hands up trying to avoid fighting the kid, but yet he is getting restrained and held back like he's the problem, and the school only intervenes when the victim fights back. And there's been so many stories that I've heard about that, where it's like the school will only intervene when the victim fights back, because now it's a big enough issue for them to take seriously. So when they do zero tolerance policies, it's like, oh yeah, we're fighting against bullying, but are you like fighting against it well? Like, no, not at all. So
no.
There's issues like that. And again, going back to what I was saying about the other stuff, like with the issue that I was thinking of with my sister's situation, where they only took her seriously after they saw it in the school with cameras. Think about it. Not all schools have cameras. If you're in like a relatively like wealthy school district, yeah, sure, there'll be cameras everywhere. But if you're like in a rural area or a poorer community, the schools don't always have cameras. So yeah, if there were no cameras, it would literally just be her word against his. And that goes back to another issue that I've written a lot about, is phone bans in schools. And one of the biggest reasons why I think phone bans shouldn't exist is it's the safety concern of being able to record abuse. There's been a lot of instances where teachers themselves have been the one harassing students. It gets recorded by the student on their phone, and then that's how the teacher gets punished, because the school was trying to cover up the abuse that was happening to the student, because the teacher was the one doing it. So when you ban phones in schools, you make it to where the kids aren't allowed to have phones in schools, you get punished if you take it out, you get punished if you're recording, you get punished, you have to like literally lock your phone in a box for some of the day, like some schools have done with their policies. It makes it to where they don't have that ability to record the abuse. And going back to my sister's situation, I think about that. Let's say the school didn't have cameras. Let's say she was in a poor school district, they couldn't afford cameras. Let's say she actually took out her phone and was trying to record the kid harassing her, the kid trying to trip her in the hallways or like spitting on her or something. If the school banned phones, the teacher could like confiscate her phone when she was just trying to record the abuse. So then if she didn't want to risk that disciplinary action, she wouldn't have the ability to take out her phone and record the abuse. So then if she tries to report it and the teacher goes, oh yeah, he's a good kid, he wouldn't have done that, and there's no cameras to prove it and no phone to prove it, then just not taken seriously at all. So I think about that a lot, and I think about when they ban phones, they don't think about the safety issues. And safety issues are also like in emergencies, you wouldn't be able to contact people, but also in recording abuse. And I think being able to record abuse is just such a very important right that people should have. And schools just don't actually think about that when, they're talking about these types of policies.
And what I also notice is that, like, one thing I noticed that's a law, at least here in California, is that you're not legally allowed to record a phone call unless you have the consent of all parties on the phone call. And I'm like, that's crazy, because what if someone on the other line is like threatening you or something and you just can't record that?
That's interesting. See, Texas, it's different. Texas, it's a one-party consent state. So I could like record a phone call without the other person knowing, and I can use that in court. And the biggest thing is if you're allowed to use it in court or not. So in California, if someone's harassing you on the phone, telling, I want to kill you, I want to do all this, you record it, you try to use that in court, that evidence can be suppressed because it's a two-party consent state for recording. And I think about that a lot, and I'm a big fan of free recording laws. That's something that I am like a huge advocate for free recording laws. There's another thing. This is kind of off topic, but it's also related. In Japan, they have a policy with all phone manufacturers where every time you take a picture or a video, the shutter has to be on, like the sound. So if you take a picture, it makes a really loud click clink sound, or like if you take a video, it makes like a ding. And they have that policy in place because of instances of like there were men who were like trying to stick cameras up girls' skirts and like take a picture or something, which, yeah, valid reason, but it also gets to the point where imagine like someone is in a situation of domestic abuse or something, like a wife or a kid is getting like abused by like a parent or another individual, especially an individual in a position of authority. So if you're trying to record that happening without the other person knowing, and your phone goes ding with a big loud recording sound, that person's going to see it, they're going to know you're recording, and they're going to take your phone, and then, well, no evidence can't fight against the abuse. That's kind of a very minor thing, but I think about that a lot because, like, imagine like there's child abuse or domestic violence thing happening in Japan, and you get caught trying to record that because of the shutter laws. So again, free recording is very important, especially in schools and especially within homes. Very important for abuse, for bullying, for harassment, for any of those things. Free recording is incredibly important.
It really is. It really is, because it literally is how you can prove what just happened to you, because the courts and the law wants to see, like they want to visually see what you are saying happened to you. And if you can't even flipping legally record any of it, how are you supposed to prove it happened to you?
Exactly. And going back, it's a big thing with taking people seriously. And like we've talked about in so many other episodes, young people aren't taken seriously a lot of the time. And Rebecca mentioned this in the episode that we did about foster care of, if you have a history of mental health issues, they'll be less likely to take you seriously. So like imagine you're getting harassed by someone and then you don't have a recording of it. There's no cameras, you didn't have your phone. You try to report that situation or it goes to court or something of someone harassing you or assaulting you, but there's no proof of it. And they go, well, she's probably lying because she had to go to a psych ward once or she was on meds once. Even though, again, like we've discussed, that wasn't your fault and that wasn't because you did anything wrong. That was just because of the environment that you were having to live in. So they can weaponize it. They can weaponize mental health as a way to discredit you as an individual. And that's such a big thing that happens to young people because young people don't have the medical autonomy. Young people really don't get to make decisions of what type of medication they're on or like if they're on medication in general, especially if they're being hospitalized and stuff like that. So then they can weaponize that mental health history to further discredit young people. And that's also a major issue of young people not being taken seriously by the system when it comes to instances like bullying, harassment, assault, any of those things.
And if you think about it, them using your mental health history against you to say that you're not credible when you're speaking up about danger you experienced, that is also discrimination.
Of course, it really is, especially because of the lack of medical autonomy that young people have. So it's like if you don't get to control what type of medication you're on because you're young and they don't let you make those decisions, they force you to be on this, and then you're trying to report an issue of like assault or something, and the defense attorney's like, well, what if she's lying? I mean, she's on all this medication. She's obviously not trustworthy. Like, that's not your fault. You had no control over that at all. So then you're getting discredited for something you had absolutely no control over. And it's ridiculous the way that they can weaponize those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been about an hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Is there any, last thoughts you want to give on the situation or anything we've talked about?
No, we got it all across.
Well, that's good. Yeah, this is a super good episode. I really liked your stories and everything. How we're connecting that to these big issues of the people not being taken seriously. And again, I just want to leave off on the message of young people deserve to be taken seriously, no matter their history, no matter the context of themselves or what's happened in their life. Like, because if someone's speaking out about these type of things, 9 times out of 10 they're being serious about it, and it should be taken seriously. So yeah, thanks for tuning into the episode, everyone, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.